The small mining ship drifted silently through the blackness of space. Its pilot, John, sat in the narrow cockpit, tapping on the control screen as he checked the ship's systems. He had been alone for 3 weeks, moving from asteroid to asteroid, collecting minerals to sell at the nearest trade station. The work was simple, but the loneliness was heavy. John took a sip from his metal cup, staring at the empty starfield ahead. The only sound was the quiet hum of the ship's engine. He was looking forward to finishing this trip, selling the minerals, and eating a hot meal that wasn't in a plastic packet. Without warning, his ship's alarm blared. The red lights on the control screen flashed a warning. An unidentified vessel was approaching at high speed. John's hands flew over the controls as he tried to change course, but the other ship was too fast. It appeared in front of him like a shadow blocking the stars. The vessel was massive, at least 10 times the size of his small mining craft. Its surface was covered in black armor plates that reflected almost no light. Strange glowing symbols ran along its side. John had never seen a design like this before. His heart began to pound. A deep voice came over the comm system, speaking in a language he did not understand. Then the ship shuddered as a powerful energy beam locked onto it. The voice spoke again, slower this time, but John still could not make out the words. Before he could respond, his ship's systems began shutting down one by one. The lights dimmed, the engines went silent, and the control screens went black. John grabbed the emergency communicator, but it was useless. He was trapped. Moments later, a metal claw extended from the alien vessel and clamped onto his ship. With a slow, steady pull, the massive ship drew him toward a glowing docking bay. John's breath was shallow as he reached for the emergency pistol stored under his seat. He had never needed to use it before, but he had no idea what was about to happen. The mining ship came to a stop inside the alien bay. A loud hiss echoed through the air as his hatch was forced open from the outside. The light from the docking bay poured in, revealing tall, armored figures standing in the doorway. At the front of the group stood a woman, or at least John thought she was a woman. Her armor was sleek, dark, and decorated with bright silver lines. A strange crest of metallic spikes ran from her forehead down to the back of her head like a crown. Her eyes glowed a deep amber, locked on him with sharp focus. She stepped forward and spoke in a voice that was calm but commanding. John could still not understand the words, but her tone left no doubt. She was in control. John raised his pistol, his hands shaking slightly. The armored woman tilted her head as if studying him, then made a short signal with her hand. 2 of her soldiers moved forward. They were even taller than she was, and their armor made them look like moving statues. John aimed the pistol at them, but the woman moved faster than his eyes could follow. She twisted the weapon from his grip with one swift motion and tossed it aside. Before he could react, her armored hand pressed against his chest, forcing him back toward the wall. She didn't hurt him, but the strength in her movement was clear. She said something in her language again, and this time a small device on her armor beeped. The same words repeated in a mechanical voice, translated into his language. "You will come with us," John swallowed hard. "Where are you taking me?" The translator spoke for her again. To Varen command, John had never heard of the Varen, but the way her soldiers surrounded him made it clear he had no choice. They led him out of his ship and into the alien vessel. The docking bay was huge, filled with other captured ships of different shapes and sizes. Some looked damaged, others abandoned. The air smelled faintly of metal and something sharp, almost like ozone. The woman walked slightly ahead of him, her movements precise and confident. Every few steps, she glanced back at him, as if making sure he wasn't trying to escape. John noticed that her armor had scratches and dents, signs of past battles. They entered a long corridor lit by narrow strips of blue light along the ceiling. Strange symbols covered the walls. and the hum of powerful engines vibrated under John's feet. At the end of the corridor, they reached a small chamber. The woman pressed her hand to a glowing panel, and the door slid open with a smooth hiss. Inside was a simple room with a bench, a table, and a small window looking out into space. She gestured toward the bench. "Sit." John sat slowly, keeping his eyes on her. "Why did you take me?" The translator repeated her response. "Orders. All humans in our territory must be detained." John frowned. "I'm just a miner." "I don't have anything you want." She studied him for a long moment before speaking again. "That is not for me to decide." Her tone was firm, but not hostile. She seemed more curious than angry. John leaned back against the wall, trying to keep calm. He knew he was far from home, far from anyone who could help him. The only thing he could do now was wait, and hope that whoever this warrior was, she didn't mean him harm. As she turned to leave the room, John noticed something in her eyes. It wasn't just cold discipline. There was something else, a spark of interest, or maybe doubt. For now, he was her prisoner. But something told him that this was only the beginning. John sat on the small bench inside the quiet chamber, staring out through the narrow window. The alien ship moved through the endless darkness, its massive frame shaking slightly whenever it changed speed. He had no idea how far they had traveled, or where they were heading. All he knew was that the armored alien warrior, Zara, was his only connection to what was happening. It had been hours since she left the room. 2 guards stood outside the door, their tall, armored bodies blocking the view of the corridor. They didn't speak to him, didn't even turn their heads when he tried to ask questions. The silence felt heavier with each passing minute. Finally, the door slid open, and Zara stepped in. Her armor was still on, and her movements carried the same calm control as before. She spoke briefly in her language, and the translator on her chest repeated the words, "You will follow me." John stood slowly, his legs stiff from sitting so long. "Where are we going?" She didn't answer directly. "You will see." The guards fell in behind them as Zara led him down a wide hallway. The walls were lined with panels of glowing symbols, and the air carried the faint scent of some unknown fuel. Every now and then, the floor trembled under their feet, as if something far away in the ship was shifting power. They entered a larger chamber filled with control stations. Dozens of alien crew members worked at them, their fingers moving over strange hexagonal controls. The large front viewport showed a bright swirl of distant stars. John realized this was the bridge. Zara walked to the center of the room and exchanged words with another officer. The officer glanced at John but said nothing. Then Zara turned to him. "This ship will take us to the command base," the translator said. "It is many cycles away. You will stay here until we arrive." John looked out the viewport. "That's a long time to sit in a small room." Her amber eyes studied him for a moment. "You may move around certain areas, but you will be watched." Before he could respond, a sharp alarm echoed across the bridge. Crew members spoke quickly in their language, their voices tense. Zara's head snapped toward the viewport. John followed her gaze and saw 3 dark shapes emerging from the blackness ahead. They moved fast, spreading out in a wide attack pattern. Their hulls glimmered faintly with red lights. "Raiders!" Zara said through the translator. The bridge crew worked quickly, adjusting controls and calling out status reports. Zara moved to one of the weapons stations, her hands gliding over the alien controls. John gripped the edge of a nearby console. "What's going on?" "They will try to board us," she said without looking up. "If they succeed, they will take everything, including you." Before John could ask why, the ship shook violently. The lights flickered, and several crew members steadied themselves against their stations. A loud hum filled the air as the main weapons fired. Through the viewport, John saw bright beams of energy streak toward the raider ships. 2 of them dodged. But the third took a direct hit, its hull breaking apart in a flash of light. The remaining 2 pressed forward, weaving through the weapons fire. Another heavy blast rocked the alien vessel, and a warning light on the nearby panel began flashing rapidly. One of the crew called out to Zara, and she quickly turned to John. "Follow me now." They left the bridge and moved quickly through the corridors. John struggled to keep up with her long strides. The ship shook again, harder this time, and sparks burst from a panel on the wall. They reached a large engine control room filled with humming machinery. Several alien engineers were working frantically, their voices raised. Zara pointed to a flickering power core in the center of the room. Its glow was unstable, pulsing in uneven waves. She looked at John. "Can you fix this?" John blinked. "I don't even know what it is." Her voice was sharp. "It powers the ship's shields. If it fails, we will be open to attack." John hesitated only a moment before rushing toward the core. Even though the technology was unfamiliar, he recognized some of the design principles: power relays, coolant lines, stabilizers. He had worked on similar systems in mining equipment, just on a smaller scale. "Give me tools," he said. Zara handed him a kit without question. John pulled off the access panel and peered inside. The stabilizer coils were overheating, and one of the coolant feeds was blocked. He disconnected the feed, cleared the blockage, and forced it back into place. The glowing pulse of the core began to steady. A sudden vibration shook the room again, but this time it was followed by the deep hum of the shields coming back online. Zara spoke quickly into her communicator. Moments later, the translator announced, "Shields restored." John closed the panel and stepped back, breathing hard. "Not bad," Zara said, her voice almost softer now. Before he could reply, another voice came over her communicator. She listened, for a moment, then looked at him. "The raiders are leaving. They cannot pierce the shields now." John leaned against the wall, relieved. "So I just saved us." Her amber eyes met his. "You did. That is why you will stay close to me." They walked back toward the bridge together. The damage to the ship was being repaired, and the crew moved with calmer precision now. Through the viewport, John could see the last raider ship disappearing into the distance. When they reached his chamber, Zara paused at the door. "You are still my prisoner, but you are not useless." John gave a faint smile. "I'll take that as a compliment." For a moment, she stood there, studying him again with that same strange expression he had seen before, part curiosity, part something else. Then she left without another word. John sat on the bench once more, the hum of the engines steady beneath him. He didn't know why these raiders had wanted him, or why the Viren had captured him in the first place. But now he knew one thing. Zara didn't just see him as cargo anymore, and that might make all the difference in whatever was coming next. The alien vessel moved through the darkness for 2 more days without incident. John spent most of his time in the small chamber, but Zara allowed him short walks around the ship under guard. He used those moments to observe the crew, the way they worked, and the strange details of the ship's design. Every time he passed a window, he saw only stars and the faint glow of distant nebulae. Finally, the ship slowed. Through the narrow window, John saw a massive structure floating in space. It wasn't shaped like the human stations he knew. Instead, it looked like a giant ring of metal, its center glowing with a soft blue light. Dozens of alien ships moved. In and out of the ring's docking bays, Zara stepped into his room. "We have reached the Viren outpost," the translator said. John nodded slowly. "And what happens here?" She didn't answer right away. "You will be processed. Command will decide what to do with you." The way she said it made John uneasy. 2. Guards joined them, and together they led him through the ship and into the docking bay. A walkway connected their vessel to the outpost. The moment John stepped inside, he noticed the change. The air smelled cleaner but sharper, almost metallic. The walls were polished and lined with glowing panels. The corridors were wider, busier, filled with armored soldiers and robed officials. They walked past several rooms where alien workers monitored large screens filled with streams of symbols. John caught glimpses of strange maps and charts that made no sense to him. The atmosphere felt tense, like a place where mistakes were not tolerated. Zara stopped in front of a wide door guarded by two heavily armed soldiers. One of them scanned, her armor with a small device, and the door slid open. Inside was a spacious chamber with a long table in the center. At the far end stood a tall Viren officer, his armor brighter and more ornate than Zara's. His face carried the same sharp features, but his eyes were a colder shade of yellow. Zara saluted in her people's style, touching the edge of her armor near her heart. The officer returned the gesture, then spoke in their language. His voice was deep and commanding. The translator on Zara's chest clicked and spoke in John's language. High Commander Draven will take custody of the human. John frowned. Custody? I thought you were taking me to your command base. Zara didn't answer right away. Instead, Draven stepped forward, his gaze fixed on John. His expression held no curiosity, only calculation. The human will be sent to the research division, the translator announced. John's stomach tightened. Research division? For what? The commander's eyes narrowed slightly, and he spoke again. The translator's voice was cold and flat. To determine the truth of human capabilities, we will learn by direct examination. John didn't need more explanation. You mean experiments? Zara's eyes shifted toward him, and for a moment she looked almost unsettled. Draven turned to her, his voice firm. The translator said, Your orders are complete. Leave the human here. Silence filled the chamber. John could see the tension in Zara's stance. Her fingers twitched slightly at her side. She spoke in her own language, her voice sharper now. Draven's reply was short and final. The guards by the door stepped forward. John took a step back. Zara, you can't just hand me over. You know what they're going to do. Her amber eyes locked on him. For a moment she didn't move. Then she spoke in her language again, this time directly to the commander. Her tone was low but intense. Draven frowned. His voice rose slightly in reply, but Zara didn't back down. Instead, she stepped between John and the guards. This human has value in the field, the translator said for her. He repaired the shield core during the raider attack. He is not a threat and should be debriefed before any further action. The commander's eyes narrowed further. Your loyalty is noted, but you will follow orders, the translator repeated. For a moment, it looked like Zara would obey. She stepped aside slightly, but instead of letting the guards reach John, she moved suddenly, her armored hand catching one guard's wrist before he could grab him. With a swift twist, she forced the guard back. The other hesitated, unsure what to do. John's heart pounded. He had no idea what was about to happen, but it was clear Zara was not ready to give him up. She spoke again, her tone final. He stays with me until my report is complete. The commander's gaze was icy. After a long pause, he gestured sharply for the guards to step back. Very well, the translator said for him. But you will report in 2 cycles. If you fail, I will have both of you brought in. Zara gave a brief nod. Understood. Without another word, she turned and led John out of the chamber. The moment the doors closed behind them, she quickened her pace. John kept close, his voice low. What just happened in there? She didn't look at him. You are safer with me, for now. They moved quickly through the outpost, back toward their ship. The guards on board glanced at them but said nothing as they re-entered. The moment the hatch sealed behind them, the ship began to detach from the docking bay. John sat heavily on the bench in his chamber. "You just went against your commander. That's going to cause trouble, isn't it?" Zara removed her helmet, revealing her sharp, angular features. "Yes." "Then why do it?" She met his eyes. "Because you are not what they say humans are, and I will find out why they lied." The ship's engines roared to life, pulling them away from the outpost. John didn't know where they were going next, but one thing was certain. Zara had just made herself his only protector in a galaxy, where almost everyone else wanted him for reasons he didn't understand. The alien vessel had barely cleared the outpost's docking ring when the alarms began to blare. Red lights flashed along the walls, and the steady hum of the engines shifted into a deep, urgent vibration. John was still seated in his small chamber when Zara burst through the door. "Move!" the translator on her chest ordered. John jumped to his feet. "What's happening?" "Attack!" she replied, already striding toward the corridor. He hurried after her as the ship shook violently, throwing him against the wall. Somewhere far below, a heavy impact rattled the floor. Zara's movements were quick and precise, but John could see tension in her face. They reached the bridge. Through the wide viewport, John saw the chaos outside. Several smaller alien ships, sleek and dark with crimson markings, were darting through the void, firing bright streaks of energy at both Zara's vessel and the massive Viren outpost. Explosions lit up the blackness like brief, violent stars. One of the bridge crew shouted something, and the translator on Zara's chest clicked. "Two enemy craft attempting to breach our hull." Zara turned to John. "Stay behind me." Before he could argue, another explosion rocked the ship. A section of the viewport's display went red, marking a hull breach in the lower decks. John could hear the distant wail of the emergency seal systems kicking in. "They're after the human," a crew member said in the translator's flat voice. John's stomach dropped. Zara didn't even glance at him. "Yes, you are worth something to them. That means they will not stop." Another shudder ran through the ship. A warning siren screamed and the lights flickered. The commander on the bridge barked orders, but Zara's focus stayed locked on John. "Come," she said, grabbing his arm. She led him off the bridge and into the narrow maintenance corridors that ran through the ship's spine. The air here was thicker with the scent of heated metal. Every few steps, they had to steady themselves against the walls as the ship swayed from enemy fire. They reached a small lift, and Zara activated it. The doors slid closed, sealing them inside as it dropped toward the lower decks. John gripped the railing. "You're taking me toward the breach." "Yes," she said simply. "That seems like the wrong direction." Her eyes met his briefly. "It is the fastest way to the shuttle bay." The lift stopped, and the doors opened to chaos. The corridor ahead was littered with debris, and the flickering lights cast jagged shadows. Two Viren soldiers were already there, firing their weapons at figures further down the hall. The attackers moved quickly, their armor dark and smooth, their weapons crackling with unfamiliar energy. Zara drew her own weapon, a long black rifle that hummed faintly, and opened fire. Her shots were precise, striking two attackers in rapid succession. They crumpled to the ground without a sound. She pulled John forward, keeping him close as they moved through the smoke-filled corridor. The air vibrated with the sound of distant explosions. Another group of enemy soldiers rounded the corner ahead. Zara didn't hesitate. She shifted her rifle to one hand, pressed a button on her armor, and a shield of shimmering energy flared to life around them. Energy bolts from the attackers splashed harmlessly against it. John ducked low, his heart pounding. Even behind the shield, the force of each impact made the air tremble. Zara's voice was steady. "Stay close to my left side. Do not fall behind." She moved forward, firing in controlled bursts, her every step pushing them toward the shuttle bay. The enemy tried to flank them, but she shifted position with quick, calculated turns, forcing them back. John realized that every movement she made was deliberate, planned to protect him. They reached the final corridor before the shuttle bay and found the way blocked. A heavy bulkhead door had sealed shut, its surface scorched from weapons fire. Two VREN engineers were working frantically to override the lock. "How long?" Zara demanded. The translator clicked. 100 seconds. "That is too long," she said, stepping past them. She placed her rifle on her back, pulled a compact device from her belt, and attached it to the bulkhead. John's eyes widened. "Is that safe?" "No," she said, pressing a sequence of buttons. The device beeped rapidly, and then a bright flash filled the corridor. The bulkhead slid open with a harsh metallic groan, revealing the shuttle bay beyond. Half a dozen enemy soldiers were already inside, moving toward a small craft. John recognized it instantly. It was a prisoner transport shuttle, the kind that could take him far from anyone who might help. Zara charged forward. Her shield flared again, and her rifle came alive in her hands. She fired in short bursts, forcing the enemy to scatter. John stayed behind the nearest cargo crate, peeking out only to see her take down one opponent after another with swift precision. The last attacker tried to retreat toward the shuttle, but Zara closed the distance in seconds. She struck him with the butt of her rifle, sending him sprawling, then fired a single shot that disabled his weapon. She turned to John. "Go! Now!" They sprinted to a small, sleek shuttle on the far side of the bay. Zara moved like she had done this 100 times before, activating the engines before she was even seated. The bay doors began to open, revealing the dark void of space beyond. A warning light flashed on the console. 2 enemy ships were locking weapons on them. Zara didn't slow. She pulled the shuttle free of the docking clamps and shot into open space. The enemy fire streaked past them, but she twisted the craft into a sharp roll, evading the blasts. John gripped the edge of his seat. "They're still chasing us," her voice was calm. "They will not catch us." The shuttle dove into the shadow of a nearby asteroid cluster. The enemy ships followed, but Zara used the dense rocks to her advantage, weaving between them until the attackers were forced to break off. Only when the scanners showed empty space around them did she ease the shuttle's speed. John let out a long breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "You didn't have to come back for me," he said quietly. Her eyes stayed on the controls. "Yes, I did." John sat in silence, watching the stars drift past. He didn't know what awaited them now, but he knew one thing for certain. Zara had risked everything to keep him out of enemy hands, and in doing so, she had made herself a target right alongside him. The shuttle drifted in the quiet shadow of a massive asteroid. Outside the small window, John could see jagged cliffs of rock floating against the background of distant stars. The silence felt strange after the chaos of the escape. Zara sat at the controls, her eyes scanning the readings. Her armor was scuffed, and one of the silver lines along her arm was cracked, but she didn't seem to care. "We are hidden for now," the translator said in its flat voice. John let out a slow breath. "For now" doesn't sound very safe. Zara kept her focus on the scanner. "We cannot run forever. We will need supplies." The asteroid field was thick, a twisting maze of rock and drifting debris. John could feel the shuttle's engines hum softly, holding them in a slow spin to match the asteroid's movement. It was the perfect place to hide, but also dangerous if the enemy found them here. Hours passed without any sign of pursuit. John sat across from Zara, watching her work. She moved with the same calm precision he had seen during the fight, but her shoulders were tense. Finally, John spoke. "Why did they say humans are dangerous?" She paused for a moment before answering. Long ago there was a war. My people fought with another race that had human allies. The war ended, but the story remained that humans cannot be trusted. John frowned. That's not true. Most of us just try to live our lives. Her amber eyes met his. Stories are powerful. When told enough times, they become truth for those who have never seen otherwise. John thought about the high commander at the outpost, about the cold look in his eyes. So they believe the story without proof? Zara nodded. Until now, before John could ask what she meant, a warning. Light blinked on the console. Zara's gaze sharpened. Small vessel entering the field. She switched the scanner to a different view. A single ship was weaving its way through the asteroids, its energy signature faint. Friend or enemy? John asked. We will see. The vessel drew closer, moving slowly as if searching. Zara adjusted the shuttle's position, hiding them behind a large piece of rock. The small ship passed within visual range. Through the window, John could see its hull was dented and patched in places. It looked more like a scavenger craft than a warship. Zara watched it for a long moment, then lowered her weapon slightly. It is a trader, not a threat. She tapped a control and sent a short signal. The trader's ship responded with a faint green light, then changed course toward them. When the two ships were close enough, Zara extended a docking clamp. A few minutes later, the airlock hissed open, and a short alien with wide, curious eyes stepped inside. It wore a long coat filled with pockets and straps. The translator clicked. You seek supplies? Yes, Zara replied. Fuel, water, and rations. The trader's eyes moved to John. And what is he? A passenger, Zara said quickly. The trader didn't look convinced, but it didn't argue. Instead, it opened a large case revealing packs of food, sealed, water containers, and a few small energy cells. Zara examined the goods carefully, then handed over a small pouch of shimmering metal fragments in exchange. When the trade was done, the short alien gave a final glance at John. Be careful. Raiders hunt humans in this sector. John's stomach tightened. Seems like everyone is hunting humans lately. The trader said nothing more and returned to its ship. A moment later, it disappeared into the asteroid field, leaving them alone. Again. Zara secured the supplies and checked the shuttle systems. We have enough to reach neutral space. John leaned back in his seat. And after that, her gaze stayed on the console. We find the truth. The hours that followed were quiet. The shuttle moved carefully through the asteroid field, avoiding any open space where they could be spotted. John helped where he could, repairing a few minor systems and making adjustments to the damaged hull panels. As they worked, the silence between them slowly became more comfortable. Zara began asking him questions about Earth, its oceans, forests, and cities. John told her about the blue sky, the smell of rain, and the sound of waves hitting the shore. She listened without interrupting, as if memorizing every word. When it was his turn, John asked about her homeworld. Zara described towering mountains made of black stone, skies filled with silver clouds, and great cities built along the edges of deep canyons. She spoke of the Varen's code of honor, their strict traditions, and the way her people valued strength and loyalty above all else. John smiled faintly. Sounds like you live in a place where someone like you fits perfectly, her. Expression didn't change, but her voice softened. Perhaps, but strength is not only in the arm that holds a weapon. Sometimes it is in the choice to hold back. Before John could respond, the scanner beeped again, this time with a much sharper tone. Zara's eyes narrowed. Multiple ships entering the field. John moved to the window. He couldn't see them, yet. But the tension in her voice was enough to make his heart race. They will find us, she said quietly. Unless we move now. She pushed the shuttle's engines to life, weaving through the rocks with quick, precise movements. The asteroids rushed past the window, some so close John could see the cracks and shadows on their surfaces. The scanner showed 3 ships moving in behind them. They were faster than the trader's craft and closing the distance quickly. John tightened his grip on the edge of his seat. "Can we outrun them?" "Not here," Zara said, "but we can make them lose us." She cut the main thrusters and let the shuttle drift, blending with the movement of the surrounding debris. The pursuing ships hesitated, scanning for their target. Then Zara spotted a narrow gap between 2 massive asteroids. "Hold on!" She fired the thrusters just enough to push them through. The gap was barely wider than the shuttle, and John could hear the faint scrape of rock against the hull as they passed. The moment they were through, Zara banked hard and slid into the shadow of a large, spinning fragment. The pursuing ships continued. Past, missing them completely, John let out a shaky breath. "You're very good at this." Zara's eyes stayed on the scanner. "It is my duty to keep you alive." John looked at her for a long moment. "Why?" "You could have given me to your commander. You could have left me." Her hands moved over the controls without pause. "Because you are more than what they say, and because I gave my word." The shuttle drifted deeper into the asteroid field, hidden once again in the quiet darkness. John realized then that Zara's protection wasn't just about orders anymore. Somewhere in the chaos of the last few days, it had become something more, a choice she was willing to risk everything for. The shuttle slipped silently through space toward a small, dying star. John and Zara had been fleeing for many cycles. The star's weak light cast a dull orange glow over the ship's metal surface. Both of them knew this was their last chance to escape the many enemies hunting them. The scanners on the shuttle beeped with warning signals. 3 enemy ships had caught up and were closing fast. The pursuers were fierce and relentless. They wanted John for reasons unknown. Zara's jaw tightened. She would not let them take him now. "We cannot outrun them," Zara said quietly. "We must fight." John nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. Though he was not a warrior, he would stand beside Zara. She had protected him for so long, and now it was his turn to help her. The shuttle moved closer to the star. The gravity of the dying sun created strange currents in space. Zara had a plan. "We will use the star's gravity well to trap them," she explained. "If they follow too close, they will be pulled into the star's deadly heat." John looked at her with respect. "It's dangerous." "Yes," she said, "but we have no other choice." The shuttle shifted its course, aiming toward the star's edge. The enemy ships followed without hesitation. Red warning lights blinked inside the shuttle as the pursuers closed in. Zara moved to the controls, her fingers flying over the panels. She activated the ship's defensive systems, preparing for the fight ahead. John stood beside her, ready to assist however he could. As they neared the star, the enemy ships began their attack. Bright energy beams shot toward Zara's shuttle. The shields flared under the assault, but the damage was mounting. One enemy ship was faster than the others. It aimed directly for the shuttle, trying to ram it into the star's surface. Zara twisted the controls sharply, narrowly avoiding the collision. John held onto a support bar, feeling the force of the sudden movement. "We need to disable their engines," Zara said. "If we can slow them down, they will fall into the star." John nodded, thinking quickly. "I can help with that," he said. Though John was not trained for battle, his experience with machines gave him an idea. He moved to the weapons console, which Zara had explained earlier. It was strange technology, unlike anything he had seen, but he could understand the basic function. "I will try to fire at their engines," John said. Zara gave a small nod. "I will protect you." The battle raged as John aimed the ship's energy weapons at the enemy. His hands trembled, but he focused hard. The first shot struck an enemy ship's engine, causing it to spark and slow. The other two enemy ships turned their fire to Zara's shuttle. She moved like a shadow, dodging blasts and returning fire with deadly accuracy. John fired again. The second shot hit another engine, and that ship began to lose control. The last pursuer, now isolated, aimed a heavy beam directly at Zara's ship. Zara activated the shuttle's energy shield. The blast hit with a terrible force, shaking the whole vessel. John could hear the warning alarms blaring. "We are taking damage," Zara said calmly. "We must end this quickly." John aimed carefully at the last ship's engines. The beam from his weapon struck true, and the engine exploded in a shower of sparks and fire. The ship spun out of control, caught in the star's pull. The two damaged. Enemy ships followed soon after, pulled too close to the star's deadly heat. Their hulls began to melt and break apart. Zara and John breathed a small sigh of relief. The immediate danger was over. The shuttle floated quietly, the star's glow warming the metal walls. John looked at Zara, admiration clear in his eyes. "You fought bravely," he said. Zara gave a small smile. "You helped me? We fought together." John nodded. "I never thought I would be a part of a battle like this." "Neither did I," Zara admitted. "But sometimes, the hardest fights bring people closer." The shuttle's systems beeped softly. Zara checked the controls and started repairs on the shield generators damaged in the fight. John joined her, helping with the tools and cables, They worked side by side. Their bond grew stronger. The trust between them was no longer just about survival. It was about friendship and respect. Outside the window, the dying star cast long shadows on the rocky surface of nearby planets. Galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but together, they were stronger. Zara paused and looked at John. "Tomorrow, we must decide where to go next." John nodded. "We need a safe place to rest and plan our next move." Zara's eyes reflected the star's fading light. "And we must find out why they want you so badly." John took a deep breath. "I want to know too." The shuttle moved, away from the star, leaving behind the burning wrecks of their enemies. The fight had changed everything. They were no longer just protector and prisoner. They were allies facing an uncertain future together. The small shuttle floated through the quiet space, far from the dangers they had escaped. John looked out the window, watching the stars drift by. His thoughts were heavy. The last few cycles had changed everything he knew about the universe. And himself. Zara sat beside him, her eyes focused on the control panels. The silence between them was comfortable now. They had fought together, hidden together, and learned from each other. But now the time had come to decide what to do next. "We cannot keep running," Zara said finally, breaking the quiet. Her voice was steady but serious. John turned to look at her. "Then what do we do?" She met his gaze. "We find a place to stand. A place where we can show them the truth about humans." John nodded slowly. "You believe there is a way to change their minds?" Zara's amber eyes burned with quiet determination. "There has to be. The stories about humans are wrong. I want to help you prove that." John smiled faintly. "I want that too." They spent the next hours planning their path. Zara accessed star charts and scanned for nearby systems that were neutral, places where the Veren influence was weak and where they might find allies. John listened carefully, offering ideas from his knowledge of human space. Their plan was simple, but risky. Reach a neutral planet known as Talos, a place where many species traded and lived in peace. There, they hoped to find help and tell their story. They knew it would not be easy. The Veren would not stop hunting them, and the truth was hidden behind years of fear and lies. As the shuttle moved toward Talos, John and Zara talked about what they had learned about each other. John shared stories of Earth, its oceans, mountains, and people. Zara spoke of her homeworld, its mountains and traditions. They found common ground in their hopes and dreams. Suddenly, the shuttle's alarm beeped sharply. Zara quickly checked. The console. Pirates, she said quietly. They have found us. John's heart jumped. Again? Zara nodded, activating the ship's defenses. The pirates were faster and more numerous than before. They attacked with energy beams, trying to disable the shuttle's engines. Zara moved the shuttle with skill, dodging blasts and firing back. John helped by operating the weapons, firing at the pirate ships. The battle was fierce, but Zara's control and John's quick thinking turned the tide. One by one, the pirate ships were forced to retreat. After the fight, John leaned back, breathing hard. We make a good team, he said. Zara smiled. We do. As the shuttle neared Talos, the planet's blue-green surface came into view. Clouds swirled above vast oceans and green forests. It was beautiful and full of life. They landed at a busy spaceport. John felt a strange hope rising inside him. Maybe here, they could start again. At the spaceport, Zara and John met others, traders, travelers, and even a few who knew the truth about humans. Slowly, they began to gather friends and allies. John spoke openly about the dangers humans faced, and the lies spread about them. Zara shared her story and how she had chosen to protect him. Their message was clear. Humans were not monsters. They were capable of kindness, courage, and friendship. It was the beginning of something new, a chance to change the story. John looked at Zara and smiled. Thank you, he said. She nodded. We will face the future together. As the twin. Suns set on Talos. John and Zara stood ready for whatever came next. The galaxy was vast, and the road ahead was uncertain. But together they had found hope, and that was a power stronger than fear.